Hello, my people. This is Pt.1 Pt.1 Emmanuel Malatedi. Oh my days. As you can tell, it's taking me quite some time to get used to my other name. I hope you guys are doing well. I hope that God is leading you and His light is continually shining upon your mind, upon your heart, and upon everything that involves you. So I wanted to kind of record another episode. But this time around, as you can tell, most of my episodes are kind of chilled because I'm just going through my thoughts, going through certain experiences that I've kind of had in the past. And also just going through lessons that I've shared with some of my friends, lessons that we've broken down, and lessons that I've kind of managed to put out my perspective, and also had the opportunity to get some feedback from my friends and hear about their struggles, their challenges, their weaknesses within certain things, but also some of their strengths, some of their mechanisms of overcoming, I guess. So I think with respect to this episode, I want to kind of touch on this topic, which I've kind of like touched on in one of my videos, in one of my TikTok videos, but I feel like with respect to actually talking about it in a podcast, I might be able to cover a lot of things and actually break down the concept into its fine pieces so that we can have a better understanding of it. So I want to talk about loving yourself. And I'm going to talk about loving yourself with respect to us giving ourselves the energy that we usually give to external things, external parties, energy we usually give to people, energy we usually give to strangers, energy we usually give to things that usually don't benefit us as much as they should in the long term, or rather things that are usually short-lived. But in this case, I think there's a importance in actually turning the dynamic around, because in this day and age, I feel like as humans, we are social animals, and I think having good social interactions with people, having good social interactions with your friends and family kind of reinforces this feeling that you're doing something right in the world. And I feel like at times with certain people, we do this at the expense of our own mental health, or we do this not as an additional thing, not as something that is flowing or overflowing from the excess of love that you're giving yourself, but rather something that is depleting the energy that you have. And I feel like this is why sometimes with certain people, I would say that we would be like, I don't know, in my respect, there were times where I felt like I would easily use this phrase, my social battery is low. And as much as you do need to recharge, I feel like if you haven't hit the right proportion of self-care and self-love, it becomes very hard for you to actually pass on this love and this sense of, or this connection, or actually, let's say, it becomes harder for you to actually foster good relations with other people for an extended amount of time. So it's quite of a weird thing that I'm going to be talking about, because we have encountered certain rules and certain commandments, even within my walk in Christianity. One thing I remember a time when the scribes were asking Jesus, what was the most important commandment within the Bible? And Jesus kind of looked at this commandment. He kind of like took all the 10 commandments and broke them down into 2 main commandments based on love. And from these 2 commandments, love itself kind of bore the fulfillment of everything that was in the old covenant and everything that you need in the new covenant. And the first commandment was to love God with your heart, your mind, your soul, and everything that is within you. And then the second was to love your neighbor as you loved yourself. Within the fulfillment of these 2, if you love God, you're not going to worship any God beside him. If you love your neighbor as you love yourself, you are not going to commit certain sins against them. You're not going to slander. You're not going to gossip. You're not going to perform adultery against them, because you love them as you love yourself, and you would do to them as you want things to be done to you. But as I looked at this commandment, especially the second one, to love someone as you love yourself, I found out that in this day and age, most people do not know how to love themselves. And when they actually love other people, or try to love other people as much as they love themselves, they end up bringing forth these feelings and these interactions that are not truly based on a good foundation of love, of actual love, I would say. And we end up hurting each other. But one thing that I've noticed kind of changes the dynamic is that when people take time to sit with their emotions, they take time to sit down with their mindsets, their ways of thinking. If these people have gone through certain traumatic events and certain things that maybe have changed their outlook towards life, towards people, towards interactions, if people sit down to actually deal with these things, we are kind of in a better situation after dealing with these things, and dealing with these things kind of improves all our interactions with other people. But one thing that I've noticed is that it's simple to say, yeah, you need to work on yourself. This is something that we hear from people everywhere. We hear it on talk shows, we hear it on channels similar to these, or in the category of the channel that I'm kind of making right now, self-help channels. But what does it mean to actually work on yourself? And how easy is it? How difficult is it to actually do what needs to be done? I would say that it's really difficult to actually sit down with your thoughts and to see the raw version of yourself. One, because it can bring forth a feeling of helplessness. And this helplessness, I think, is kind of a feeling that is there to deceive you, because you might feel like you don't have the power to change some things. But if you feel like you don't have the power to change some things, there are probably people who are put in your vicinity, people who you might have access to, knowingly or unknowingly, that have certain skills or have gone through certain things that can help you with it, with respect to the things you need to change. But then again, I feel like actually being honest, actually opening yourself up, kind of opens you up to judgment. And as humans, we do not want to be judged. We hate being judged. But I think actually opening up to your friends, your boys, and actually showing them the raw version of you is a beautiful thing, because it leaves no stones unturned and helps you to be accountable to those people, but also to work on the things that you might have hid. Because one thing that I've noticed is that if you have a certain seed within your heart or within your life, that seed will grow whether you hide it or not, and in due time it will bear fruit. We talk a lot about gardens, a lot about seeds and trees within this channel, because that's how I got to understand a lot of things with respect to life. If you want, I feel like we kind of ignore certain things. Like, let's look at the different gardens in our lives. Let's look at relationships. Let's look at marriages, the garden of marriage, maybe. For you to actually reap fruit from the garden of marriage, reaping fruit in this context might be actually having a good marriage, actually, being able to communicate well with your spouse, actually being able to deal with certain issues well. You need to have planted certain trees within that garden to actually get certain fruit. But the thing is that the planting of seeds is not only something that is your responsibility or that is only dependent on you. Rather, you would find out that there are different things around you that are planting seeds within the different gardens you have. And if we do not check what seeds have been planted or what plants or seedlings are emerging from our gardens, we end up having the good trees and the weeds growing up together, suffocating the good that we had intentionally planted, and rather giving fruit, or we would say rather leading to the weeds actually being the prominent plant within that garden. So I would say that a lot of things plant different seeds in our lives. Media plants different seeds. The culture plants different seeds. Someone who has been hurt before, and you kind of watch that podcast on the internet and you kind of hear what they say, they plant a certain seed within you. And the thing is that with humans, people repent, guys. People can say things, then change their minds later. But the thing is that when they were saying those things, you might have received the seed of the ideology that they had, and it might have grown, and it might be bearing fruit in your life now, and that might be bad fruit. And the problem with that is that they might have easily gotten rid of that tree later on. Maybe they're suffering the consequences now, and there are consequences that you don't see. And maybe it might be hard for you to actually get rid of those trees with respect to who you are, the factors around you, the habits that constitute to your character. So I think it is very important for us to make sure that within each and every garden, we are checking this garden, we are intentionally planting seeds in it, even if these gardens are gardens that are going to have fruit in the long term, in 10 years from now. I think it is important for you to intentionally check this garden, intentionally remove some of the weeds that have been put in there, intentionally do work. Because if you intentionally do this, you will reduce all the things that would not work for you within that area, and rather promote the healthy growth of the trees that you want and get the fruit that you want in due time. So I think this is a huge aspect of self-love, a huge aspect that is usually ignored, but an aspect that is very important. We need to sit down with our thoughts. We need to notice what state our mental environment is in, why it is in that state, what we need to do to actually work on certain things. And like I said, this requires time. This requires actually sitting down with your thoughts. And this is sometimes not a pleasing experience. But I would say that if you have friends, if you have people around you, if you have access to people you could talk to, try to actually sit down with them and share certain things. And I feel like by doing so, you are taking a step in actually knowing yourself more and working on your inner being so that you can actually love yourself, but also produce a character that emanates love, a character that will also attract love. But I think also on one episode I would have to talk about how you also have to protect yourself, because we're living in a world where people can take advantage of you, and especially in a world where I would say good or kind-hearted people are easily taken advantage of, are hurt by such situations and end up turning into versions of themselves that are not comparable to who they were before. I've told my friends to not let the darkness of this world corrupt the purity of their hearts, the purity of their love, the purity of their genuine care with regards to other people. So yeah, I think that is what I wanted to touch on this episode. Next episode, I think I'm going to talk more about paying yourself first and how you can actually make time and make progress with regards to self-improvement. Yeah, I hope this episode blesses you. Hit that like button. There's a like button. Please rate our show. There's a little 3-dot ting right there next to the Wick Guardians of Thought. Please give us a rating, share with your friends, and let us try to affect as many lives as we possibly can. I think one thing, my friend asked me why I was doing this, and I think they were genuinely asking. And I think I came up with this answer, and it is basically because each episode I make might not be made for the thousands or the millions, but it is made for you right now in this moment, and I believe that it will affect whoever it's meant to affect at the right time for the right reason. And therefore, with the love I have for you, the love I have for people around me, and the love that has been put in me because I've been loved too, I just had to do this and just put these words of encouragement out there. Take care. May God continually reveal himself unto you. Ciao.